Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. I have Olly with us today. We are going to talk about breaking through barriers, scaling, and creating a business that you love. I want to welcome you to the show, Olly.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
One of the things I like to do right from the beginning so that our listeners know who you are. Can you just give us a high level overview? What is it that you are doing in your business to make your mark on the world, making a positive difference in people's lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a long creative history in my world. So I used to be a jazz musician. I then went to become an English teacher. And then when I was in my mid 30s, I transitioned into entrepreneurship. I built a big business in the language learning space. And what I do these days is help entrepreneurs who are on the same path break through whatever barrier is facing them. So I do that through I run the occasional workshop. I write a lot of newsletters. I write big, long, massive book length case studies, and I work with entrepreneurs one to one if they're a kind of a good fit for my experience. So that's what I do. I guess I help the Olly of 5 years ago make better decisions.
The Olly from 5 years ago. I'm sure there are some people listening who are in that stage in their business. Let's talk a little bit about that because there is a lot of growth that needs to take place as a business owner. Obviously, life in and of itself, we're always learning, growing, to varying degrees. There really aren't a whole lot of shortcuts when it comes to business success. There's a lot of inner growth that needs to occur, a lot of new skills that need to be developed and refined. Let's go back to that earlier version of you and speak to those individuals who, whatever they're going through in their business, maybe they're feeling like they've plateaued or they've stagnated, or they just feel like they're right on the verge of a breakthrough or scaling or up leveling in some way. Um, I have a feeling that's where we're really going to be able to deliver a lot of value in this conversation.
Sure. Everyone's heard the expression, there's no such thing as business problems, just mindset problems. And in my experience has been absolutely that. I think it's unavoidable in the early stages of business that you have to go through a period of hustle. I mean, I think it's smart and reasonable to expect at least 5 years of kind of, nose to the grindstone, uh, working very hard to build something. It is difficult to get something off the ground. But I think what happens is that people don't realize that they have permission to slow down or even to stop. We're so used to working hard, to hustling to build the thing that we want to build, that it never occurs to us that there might be a time when it's appropriate to slow down and to stop. And everyone's in a different place. Some people still have lots of growth ahead of them. Many businesses reach a kind of natural plateau. A lot of the people that I work with find themselves in a plateau of the business, and they find themselves thinking, I want to scale, I want to continue to grow. But when you really press them on it, what they actually want is their life back. They want time to take their kids to school, meet their kids from school. They want time to sit down and read a book. They want time to actually experience living life. And they're so far from that because they've been so focused on more revenue, essentially, is everyone's metric, more bigger audience, more views, more revenue. Because I honestly think we are lazy in the sense that we allow our egos to drag us into this hustle culture version of 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 success, where there's always someone more successful than you, there's always someone bigger than you, with a bigger YouTube channel, with more revenue. It's very uncool to pause and ask, what do I want from life exactly? How many hours do I want to work in a week? How much money do I want? And but there comes a point where if you don't take those questions seriously, then you do find yourself chasing something that you don't want, and that can lead to many years of your life slipping by. And you know, um, I think the worst thing of all is to get to a place where You might find all kinds of levels of financial success, but then you realize you didn't see your kids grow up. And personally, that's the thing that I want to avoid at all costs. And most people who find themselves in my world resonate with that, and also want to be able to watch their kids grow up and be in that very active, present part of that experience.
I want to talk a little bit about this from a belief perspective. So you mentioned there is that deep rooted desire to get your life back. And for the driven entrepreneur, someone who is so clear that they want to create something that they're proud of, they want to create something that they feel really is a representation of their vision, their goals, their intentions. You mentioned, though, the ego, which always plays in. No matter how much inner work we do, we're still going to encounter some of those old insecurities that become the destructive motivator, always sort of driving us for those less than ideal, reasons, as opposed to just doing it because it fills us up and we love it. And, we really genuinely are creating a life and business that we love. You mentioned wanting to spend more time with your children and to enjoy those parts of our life where there is kind of an expiration date on some of these things. You only get to enjoy those early years, with your children one time. Once they get to a certain age, that's a whole different, experience that you have with them. And everybody listening, they have other areas of their life that are priorities. Maybe it is their relationship with their spouse, their significant other. They want it to be more loving, more harmonious. They want more presence. They want more, intimate vacations and romance or whatever. They want to spend more time actually, being present with their children, playing with them, going to the sports events and just being there, having the headspace to be there. But oftentimes there is that inner conflict, and that's where the beliefs come in. That's where a lot of those limiting beliefs come in. That belief that I can't, or there's that tendency when we're coming from a place of scarcity, even if it's irrational. Like, I'm sure you see this with your clients. You may have experienced it as well. I've seen it with my clients, over 2 decades of doing this work. You can have a shit ton of money in the bank and still feel scarcity, still feel like you just got to keep driving harder and harder and harder. It's not enough. It's not enough. You don't have that inner sense of like well-being and stability and security. When it comes to those types of beliefs, those mindset obstacles, I'd like to talk about this from your perspective because you make a really good point, in terms of sometimes it's not actually scaling that you really, really want to do. Sometimes
Right.
it's just restructuring your entire business and your entire life. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, you know, I f- s- I can tell you the most confused and lost time of my life, and it was about 2 or 3 years ago, where I'd grown my business, story learning, the language business, to a point where, from by any objective measure, it was more successful than I ever thought it would be. So we were doing 7 figures in revenue, 7 figures in profit. I was working about 4 days a month in the business. So I had designed what I thought would be the ideal business. And the ability to make 7 figures revenue, so 7 figures profit, working 4 days a month. Like, find me someone who can tell me that that is not good enough. I mean, that's pretty damn good. And yet I was the most confused that I've ever been, because what was happening was I realized that the business was not giving me what I actually needed to be fulfilled. And this is where so many people get into trouble, because they get sucked into the idea that it's the money. that has to come first for understandable reasons, right? If you're creative like me, you come from a place where you never had any money. I was 34 years old when I started my business. No, sorry, I tell a lie. I was 32 years old when I first started my business. I was an English teacher earning $1,000 a month living in Egypt. I had no money. I had no career prospects. I had nothing. And so for me at that time, building a business that could even just pay my way would have been fantastic, let alone making millions a year without having to work. It was a dream scenario. But what that shows is that it's very rare. It's in almost no cases does the money, once you have it, actually tick all the boxes that you need, because there are all these other facets of life which are so important, and you listed all of them off very, very, very adeptly. Everything from intimacy, uh, relationships, family, experience, all of these things, your health, your career, feelings of achievement. All of these things matter to us, and this is all kind of covered in your typical kind of high performance bracket. If you take life coaching or high performance coaching, that's the sort of stuff that they teach you. But I really feel that we just get, because of the world we live in, where money and income and business size and all of these things becomes the kind of reductive status symbol that signals your place in the world. It is a treadmill that we get on, and no one ever allows us to get off. And when I talk to people about this, it's as if they've never heard it before, or it's as if they know these questions exist. They know, yes, I should take the other parts of my life seriously, but no one's ever really sat them down and said, right, we're going to talk about this now. What are the things that make you feel fulfilled? What are the things that you value in your life that you want more of? And now let's take proactive steps to actually change course so that you're not just chasing more money aimlessly, but you're actually designing a life that you can be fulfilled with. And but it's very difficult to do that yourself. You can't read the label from inside the bottle, as Scott Galloway says. It's especially a business that's 5, 10 plus years old. There's so much history there. There's so many things that you've built up. It's not easy to just unravel that and redesign it. It's almost impossible to do that by yourself unless you are really something incredible polymath. So I do think it begins with this very, there needs to be an intervention of some kind that gives you the permission to stop chasing more and to start taking these other parts of life seriously. And I think for people like us who are driven entrepreneurs, there's a part of me that feels you have to go through this process of getting the money only to realize that doesn't do it for you. Because I kind of feel, do you know what I mean? For people who haven't made their money yet, if you try to sit them down and say, look, the money's not going to make you happy, the look in their eyes is like, yeah. Let me worry about that once I've got the money. But the problem is that never stops. And so there needs to be an intervention of some kind that gives people permission to get off that hamster wheel and to start really, really thinking deeply and in a committed way about the way they want to live their lives.
So for someone who is either stuck in that mindset of, I need to be doing more, we need to keep driving the business forward, or even for someone who just heard what you said and they're like, yep, heard it all before, Olly. Everybody keeps saying it's not about the money, but you don't understand,
Yeah, I still
right?
need more of it. Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
understand, right? I can't feel abundant. I can't feel a sense of security so I can be present when I'm with my significant other or with my children. How could I possibly change that 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 drive, right? How
Yeah.
could I possibly pull myself out of that state?
I think there are different levels of this. There are practicalities, and then there's the more kind of nuanced side. And like I said earlier on, I do think that there is, in the process of building a business, you do have to go through a period of very intense work. There's no getting around that. But there are many factors that come into play around how you structure your business, what financial liabilities and commitments you already have. So for example, you can have there's many different ways to, so $1 million can mean a lot of different things. Okay. So for example, you can have a business at $1 million in revenue, but only has a 10% profit margin. Now you could continue to scale that business to 10 million to get your profit margin to a million, or you could fix the profit margin problem. You could have a business that does 10 million in revenue, a million in profit, but you've got two co-founders beside yourself, which means that million in profit is now only 333,000. You could be making a million in profit, but you made some bad decisions. You bought a house that was far too expensive for you. You've got three cars and God knows what else that you need to debts that you need to service, whatever. And so that million in revenue is not enough for you. So you do have to look at the individual case. You line up three different people making the same money, and you can have three very, very different outcomes. So there are practicalities there. And but this is where really kind of holding up a mirror to the situation becomes really important. I have a number of friends who have quite successful businesses that are doing seven figures, multiple seven figures in revenue, but simply because of the fact that they have a couple of co-founders, for them, that individual person to reach the stage of a solo founder comparably, they would need a business that's three times bigger. And so, you know, there are difficult questions like, is this really the vehicle that's going to get you where you want to go? If you believe that the business is capping out and it's not going to continue to scale, but you've got to continually share your profits three ways with someone else, is that actually going to get you there? And it may be the case that you take the difficult decision to shut that or to move away from the business, sell your stake, and move on to something else. Recently I did this with story learning. So this is the business that has changed my life in many ways, including financially. And yet I've essentially walked away from it. I don't really work in the business anymore because I came to the very difficult conclusion that the business wasn't giving me what I needed to be fulfilled. One of my core values personally that I've discovered is connection. I need to feel connection with individuals. And this is with my family, with friends, with, I would prefer to be doing this podcast in person, for example, given the choice. So I actually I moved away from story learning and started putting all of my effort and energy onto building my personal brand business, in my newsletter where I write about business. Because what I realized was that when I get to work with entrepreneurs one-to-one, I get that connection and it gives me an incredible sense of fulfillment. It's time for money. It breaks all the rules. I shouldn't be doing. I've gone from a completely passive digital business to a business where I'm doing time for money. It's crazy. It makes no sense. And yet I'm much happier because of it. So, so I think you've got to take all of these things in the round. And someone who doesn't feel satisfied, who's not able to relax, what is the reason for that? Is it that your business just hasn't matured yet and you need to put in another couple of years to just really get to that inflection point? Is it that you are actually, as many entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs doing, mid to high six figures, are you actually running like doing far too many things inside your business and you just need to scale it all back? Are you doing too much? Or is it the case that you do actually have everything that you need? You just haven't worked out the numbers and you haven't twigged the fact that actually you could be living your dream life right now. You've just got to do the personal work to get off the hamster wheel and be able to move away from attachment to these outcomes that are in your mind. So I don't think there's a one size fits all piece of advice here, but what the commonality with all of that is to really honestly engage with your situation and get perspectives from other people, friends, other entrepreneurs who can help give you a sense of proportion. Because I'm talking a lot. Last thing, we all tend to think that we are fighting our own battles individually, that we're the only people with our set of problems in the world. Guarantee you it's not true. There are many, many entrepreneurs who have been through exactly the same thing as you. You are not alone. Your situation is not unique. And you'll probably find that when you start to talk to people who have some experience of these issues, that actually there is a very established path to helping you figure out how to make your life a bit easier.
I love that. I love that you shed sort of the light of truth on the situation. And I want to just highlight one thing that you just finished off with. And that is something that I used to bring up a lot more often on this podcast. A big motivation for me doing this podcast was to dispel a lot of those myths that business owners have in their mind that there's something wrong with them, they're alone in their struggles, it's easier for other people are naturally more talented, other people have more luck, whatever that is. And I often would tell a story about when early on, when I started working exclusively with entrepreneurs in my mindset coaching and hypnotherapy practice, the business owners that I was working with to help them overcome their fears and their insecurities and their self-doubt and their relationship problems and, their struggles were doing much better than me in their business and financially. And it was a revelation to me because in my very limited mind set at that time, um, anyone who was successful in business was like on this pedestal. And when I started to realize that no, we're all human. No one, I mean, we all have different talents and skills and abilities, but what I was finding was most business owners, including successful entrepreneurs who have created 7, 8, 9, 10-figure businesses, they're so human. They're so like just normal people full of
But
fears, doubts, insecurities, self-limiting beliefs.
it's even worse. It's worse than that though, because I mean, funnily enough, I just published a video yesterday, which is going to date this a little bit. But I published a video on my YouTube channel called "Why You Hate Your Business," and in it, I make this exact point that generally when all the different entrepreneurs I meet, the ones who are biggest, who have the highest revenue, are more successful, have the most pathologies, and they have they are the most confused. They are the most they are the most dissatisfied, and it's because I think they haven't managed to develop a healthy relationship with their own ego. And there's a great book by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy called The Gap and the Gain, which everybody should read because it's a whole book on this topic. And for anyone who's not familiar, it makes the point that driven entrepreneurs always measure themselves, but tend to measure themselves based on the gap between where they are currently and where they want to be. So if you have a 7-figure business, damn it, I don't have an 8-figure business, and you fixate on the gap. But healthy, psychologically, mentally healthy entrepreneurs focus on the gain. How far have I come since I started? And that is measurable. You can see since I started, 10 years ago, I was teaching English in Egypt for $800, £800 a month, $1,000 a month. And now I'm here with multiple businesses. Look how far I've come. I can measure that. That there is a much more reliable barometer of happiness and achievement than the vague, nebulous gap between where you are now and where you want to be, where you don't even know what that holds. So yeah, great, a fantastic book for anyone who's struggling with that stuff.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so we have burned through this episode. Now, I know there is a lot more wisdom and value inside of you. So I want to make sure our listeners know how they can connect with you, how they can learn more. Can you share with our listeners, where would you direct them to? How can they find you?
Absolutely. So what most people enjoy most from me is I've written a 118-page case study, which describes exactly how my business storytelling works. So if you run an education business, or you want to know how an online digital business that makes millions of dollars a year runs, I've basically written a book that covers the whole thing. You can get it at ollyrichards.co, where you can also sign up to my newsletter where I email about this stuff. And if you like videos, you can find me on YouTube. If you search Olly Richards, you're gonna find my language channel as well. But try and find the business channel. You'll find it somewhere, and I make videos about all of this stuff as well.
Awesome. So good. A lot of nuggets. This has been fantastic. I want to thank you so much, Olly, for being with us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's been great to chat. My favorite topic as well.
It's a great topic, isn't it?
It really is. It gets to the core, the business stuff. Honestly, making money, growing a business, that's the easy part. Being at peace with it and creating a life that you love, that's the harder part.
Well, I am going to trust that our listeners are on this journey because they're doing the inner work. They understand that the inner game is just as important, if not more important in some cases, than the outer game of business. And we're obviously dishing up both sides of the spectrum because it does take both sides. It's not just to sit around and meditate and all of a sudden somehow you magically manifest a multi-million dollar business. There's real actions that you need to take. There are real skills that you need to learn. There are real things that you need to do. But without that inner foundation, you could create it, but you could feel like shit. Or you won't even get to the point where you create it because of that internal crap, all the self-sabotage and the limiting beliefs and stuff like that. So, for those of us listening, I want to thank you so much for being with us. You know we're doing this for you. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.